Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The great Marcia Fudge. Oh, thank you. I'm honored. I'm truly honored. Let me just, if I may, for a moment, speak about Marcia Fudge in front of her face. She and I served together, obviously, in the United States Congress. She and I served together in the Congressional Black Caucus. I have seen Marcia Fudge when the cameras are off and when the cameras are on. And whatever the circumstance, Marcia Fudge always speaks truth. And she is among her colleagues, and I include myself as one of them, a go-to person. Marcia, I have called you up or consulted with you many times on many issues. Your advice is always sage and wise and sound. You are a great friend and mentor to so many people, and you are not only a leader of this great state, but a national leader, and I thank you for all that you do for so many. And to the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party, congratulations on all of the success you have earned over so many years, and thank you for all of the work that you do every day. This is a room of national leaders. The work that you do not only impacts the people of this county, but this county, of course, is a bellwether for the people not only of the state, but of the country. And consistently, you hold it down, you work tirelessly, you work on behalf of people that you may never meet and people who may never know your names, but forever have benefited because of your passion and your voice. And so I am here to thank you. Thank you, thank you for the leadership that you have always given and the leadership you inspire. Thank you for that. So, yes, I am running for President of the United States. And so it's been many weeks now since we announced in the place of my birth, Oakland, California. And over the course of these ensuing weeks, people have been asking me why. And I say what I think we as Democrats all know, which is this is an inflection moment in the history of our country. This is a moment in time that is requiring us each as individuals and collectively to look in a mirror and ask a question. That question being, who are we? And I think what we all know is that part of the answer to that question is we are better than this. So this is a moment in time then that requires us to fight for the best of who we are. This is a moment in time, I believe, that requires anyone who would think of or call themselves a leader to fight for the importance of truth and justice in our country, and the importance of restoring truth and justice in our country. I think this is a moment in time that is requiring anyone who puts themselves out as a leader to fight for restoring equal access to success for all Americans. And it is for these reasons that I am taking on this process of running. And I guess there's one other reason that is personal. I was raised, my sister and I, we were raised by a mother who was all of 5 feet tall. But if you had ever met our mother, you would have thought she was 7 feet tall. And our mother was the kind of parent who, if you ever came home complaining about something, the first thing she'd do is she'd look at you and say, okay, so what are you going to do about it? So I decided to run for President of the United States. There you go. So let's talk for a moment, fellow Democrats, about the importance of restoring truth and justice in our country. You know, over the last couple of years, we've all talked a lot about the importance of truth, and mostly in the context of all of the untruths that are being spoken. But I'd ask that we also think about the importance of truth in this context, which is, right now in our country, there are a lot of people who rightly feel a great sense of distrust in their government and its institutions and leaders. And the thing about a nature of a relationship of trust is that a relationship of trust, by its very nature, is reciprocal. You give and you receive trust. And one of the most important ingredients in trust is truth. But there's a funny thing about truth. Speaking truth can often make people quite uncomfortable. And for those of us who are used to speaking behind a microphone and a podium, there is an incentive that when we speak, we will engage in happy talk, that we will speak with the intention of making everyone feel lovely. We will sprinkle lovely dust all over the room, and people will applaud, and job will have been done. Well, speaking truth doesn't always accomplish that goal. But the other thing about speaking truth is this. Yes, people may walk away from that conversation thinking, I didn't particularly like what I had to hear. But they will also walk away from that conversation knowing it was an honest conversation. So I believe this is a moment in time where leaders must speak truth. And now you all are looking at me, okay, Kamala, what are some of the truths you have in mind? Well, I'd like to share some of them with you. My home state of California just on Saturday night made clear what was clear in Charlottesville and what was clear at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Let's speak truth. Racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia are real in this country. Let's speak that truth. And let us speak it in a way where we all agree that these are born out of hate, hate which has received new fuel in these last 2 years. Let us all agree that whenever and wherever we see those expressions of hate, we must all stand up and speak out. Let us agree that anyone who is ever the subject of that hate should never be made to fight alone. Let's speak that truth. Let's speak truth. America's economy is not working for working people. Now, how do we know that, Pastor? Well, we know that when you look at the fact that in America today, almost half of America's families are a $400 unexpected expense away from complete upheaval. $400. That could be the car breaks down, a hospital bill folks didn't see coming, will create complete chaos in that family. Let's speak truth. In America today, in 99% of the counties of our country, if you are a minimum wage worker working full-time, you cannot afford market rate for a one-bedroom apartment. In our country last year, 12 million people had to take out a loan of, on average, $400 from the payday lender at an interest rate of often in excess of 300%. These are the truths about the economy of America today. And I find it really kind of sad and pathetic when supposed leaders walk around touting about, oh, the economy is great. The economy is great, they say. And you ask them, well, how so exactly is your economy so great? And then they refer to the stock market. Well, that's fine if you own stocks. Then you ask them, well, do you have another measurement for how your economy is doing so great? And they talk about the unemployment numbers. Well, yeah, people are working. They're working 2 and 3 jobs to get through the end of the month. And in our America, nobody should have to work more than 1 job to get through the month and pay the bills. Which is why I am proposing that we reform America's tax code in this way. For families that are making less than $100,000 a year, I will implement up to a $6,000 tax credit that those families can receive at up to $500 a month, which will be all the difference between them being able to get through the month with dignity or not. Economists have called it what would be the greatest middle-class tax cut we have seen in generations. It will lift up 1 in 2 families, 2 in 3 children in our country. 60% of black households will be lifted out of poverty because of this initiative. And as you can imagine, there are folks who then will say, especially on the Republican side, well, how are you going to pay for it? Well, I'll tell you how we're going to pay for it. On day one, we're going to repeal that tax bill that cut taxes for the top 1% and the biggest corporations in our country. That's how we're going to pay for it. Let's speak truth. We are a society that pretends to care about education, but not so much the education of other people's children. I am traveling our country, and I have met more teachers than I care to tell you who are working 2, sometimes 3 jobs to pay the bills. 94% of teachers in public schools in our country come out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. And let's be clear about this. There are 2 groups of people who are raising our children. Parents, often with the assistance of grandparents and aunties and uncles, and our teachers. But we are not paying our teachers their value. In fact, the teachers of America, on average, earn 10% less than similarly college-educated professionals. And you know, this is personal for so many of us. For me, my first-grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, attended my law school graduation. But then I'd heard the all, but let's just say, so many of us in this room have that kind of story where we were blessed to have some teacher along the way who took a particular interest in us, who made us feel special. We weren't particularly special, but they made us feel that way, and we believed them, which is why we're all under one roof today, talking about who might be the next president of the United States. So what I am proposing is what will be the first federal investment ever in closing the teacher pay gap, which nationally will mean closing a gap of $13,500 a year. Now, $13,500 a year. $13,500 a year represents in most places in our country a year's worth of mortgage payments. $13,500 a year represents a year's worth of grocery bills. $13,500 a year means putting a significant dent in student loan debt, which is one of the major barriers to students going into the teaching profession. And Cuyahoga Democrats, to put a fine point on it, I believe that you can judge a society based on how it treats its children. And one of the greatest expressions of love that a society can make toward its children is to invest in their education and, by extension, our teachers. Let's speak truth. Let's speak truth. Climate change is real. And it represents an existential threat to who we are as a species, and we can no longer afford to have supposed leaders in Washington, D.C. who are pushing science fiction instead of science fact on an issue that will result in direct harm to us, our children, and grandchildren, and it is one of the greatest reasons we need a new president of the United States. Let's speak truth. On any given weeknight in America, there are families that sit down to dinner wherein the parents ask their children, elementary, middle, high school students, "Honey, how was your day?" To which those children respond, "It wasn't a good day." Why? What happened? Well, we had to have a drill at school today. A drill where we learned about how we had to go run in a closet if a gunman is roaming the hallways of our school. Why, Mommy and Daddy, did we have to have that drill? To which, of course, the response is, well, because there are supposed leaders who have failed to have the courage to reject a false choice, which suggests you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away, have failed to have the courage to say, hey, it's fine if you want to go hunting, but we need reasonable gun safety laws in this country, including universal background checks and a renewal of the assault weapons ban. Let's speak truth. Which is why I recently announced on this subject that when elected, I will give the United States Congress 100 days to put a bill on my desk dealing with this issue. And if they fail to have the courage to do it, I am prepared to take executive action, and in particular to require that anyone who on an annual basis sells more than 5 guns, they will be required to do a background check on the people they sell those guns to. And I will take executive action to say that the ATF must revoke the licenses of gun dealers who break the law. And to be clear, 90% of the guns that are used in crime in our country, 90% of the guns that have been used in crime are sold by 5% of the dealers. We can do something about this, and we need a chief executive of the United States who understands that as it relates to the ATF, they've been doing fine on the A and the T, but they need to do better on the F. Let's speak truth. Let's speak truth that in America today, there are families that have to sit down with their son, sometimes their daughter, when that child turns 12, to have what's called the talk, wherein those parents have to explain, son, you may be stopped, you may be arrested, you may be chased, you may be shot because of the color of your skin. Let's speak the truth that in America today, we have a criminal justice system that is flawed, that has been informed often by bias, and is in need of drastic reform, and that in our America today, no young man should fear for the safety of his life because of the color of his skin. Let's speak truth. Let's speak truth. Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States. Yet on that subject, we have a commander-in-chief who would prefer to take the word of the Russian president over the word of the American intelligence community, that on the issue of an American student that was tortured and later died, we have a commander-in-chief that would prefer to take the word of a North Korean dictator, that we have a commander-in-chief who would prefer to take the word of a Saudi prince over the word of the American intelligence community when it comes to a journalist who was assassinated and later died, a journalist who had American credentials. And let's speak truth, we can no longer afford that commander-in-chief. And I could go on and on, but I do have a plane to catch. So I would like to end the truths with this one, which I believe in particular at this moment in time is so important, that we not only speak, but that we believe in our hearts and in our souls. And that truth is this: the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And we must speak that truth and know it to be true. And here's how I think about it. I think about it based on what I'd like to call the middle of the night thought. You know, some people refer to that as the 3 a.m. thought. Other people refer to that as the witching hour. You know what I'm talking about, right? When you wake up in the middle of the night with that thought that's been weighing on you. Well, for the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of the party with which we're registered to vote. For the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of some simplistic demographic some pollster put us in. And for the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it usually has to do with one of just a very few things. Our personal health, the health of our children or our parents. For so many Americans, can I get a job, keep a job, pay the bills by the end of the month, retire with dignity? For our students, can I pay off those student loans? For so many families, can I help my family member get off their opioid addiction? The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. So I'm not buying that noise they're trying to sell. When they're trying to get us to point fingers at each other, when it's us versus them, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying those folks who would say there's one conversation you have in the Midwest and another one you have in the South and another one you have on the coast. I'm not buying that either. The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And I believe we must hold on to that as we march toward 2020. And as we march toward 2020, I'd also ask this. Let us remember that one of the greatest strengths about who we are as a country is by our very nature, we are aspirational. We are an aspirational nation. We are an aspirational people. We are a nation that was founded on noble ideals. The ideals that were present when we wrote the Constitution of the United States and all of its amendments and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence and those words we spoke in 1776 that we are all and should be treated as equals. We are aspirational. We are also clear-eyed. We've not yet reached those ideals, but the strength of who we are is that we fight to get there. And so I say this is that moment in time where we fight, knowing what can be, unburdened by what has been, that we fight, and let this be a fight that is born out of optimism, that we fight, knowing this is a fight born out of love of country, this is born out of fighting for the soul of our country, and this is born out of knowing we are better than this and we will win. Thank you.